And we're back. Welcome back to the Premier League prediction series. It is time for Premier League Game Week 10 on a day which could be the most important day on this YouTube channel so far. At the time of recording, we are just 13 subscribers away from 5,000, the biggest milestone we would have achieved so far. So if you are new around here and you haven't done so already, you could be that person to tick us over to 5,000 subscribers today. And as always, a massive thank you to all of you that have been subscribed for the longest of times on this channel. And welcome, of course, to any of those new people as well. And whilst you're in and around that subscribe button, please do consider dropping a like on this series, whether you've subscribed or not, if you do enjoy all of my prediction series. And let's now move over to the Game Week screen where you'll see all of our season scores so far after what was a very poor round of Premier League predictions last week, where we only got 3 out of 10. Our Premier League results goes to 47 out of 90, with correct scores now 8 out of 90, I guess, is the way you want to look at it. And our season scores after a Carabao Cup, where we did slightly better, our overall season results currently stand at 241 out of 425, with 21 correct scores overall. As always, we are completely transparent with you on how we are performing in terms of predictions. But as we always say, this series is about providing you guys with all the information that you need going into every single match. And without any further ado, let's get started with Premier League Game Week 10, because I got 3 out of 10 last week, and I'm telling you right now, before we even make a single prediction here, you can make genuine arguments for all 3 results in all 10 fixtures that we're going to be talking about today. This is a very tough week of Premier League action, so let's get into it with the opening game of the weekend. The Saturday night football sees the Saturday lunchtime football sees Newcastle United taking on Arsenal. Newcastle bouncing back from their defeat to Chelsea with victory over Chelsea in the Carabao Cup, albeit with Chelsea fielding an entirely different starting 11. Whilst that game was going on, Arsenal were beating Preston with their kids team after what was, if we're being honest, quite a poor 2-2 draw against Liverpool. I don't think either side played particularly well in that 2-2 draw. The big concerns going into this game for both sides, it's to do with the G's, if we're being honest. For Newcastle, it's whether or not Anthony Gordon is going to be fit. For Arsenal, it's whether or not Gabriel is going to be fit. As things stand, there is no news on either of those players, so we're going to have to wait for the press conferences to see if those players are going to be available. However, for Arsenal, William Saliba will be back in their defence because his 1-match suspension is now over. Last season, it was a 1-0 victory to Newcastle in this fixture. So there's a little bit of momentum on Newcastle's side when it comes to the head-to-head. There's a little bit of momentum on Newcastle's side when it comes to performances over the last couple of weeks. So I'm not going to go all in, but I'm going to be cautious. I don't think Arsenal have played particularly well the last couple of weeks. So I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. I would still expect Arsenal to be the favourite, but I'm not confident enough to give them the win. That then takes us to the 3 o'clock kickoffs, and the first of those sees AFC Bournemouth taking on Manchester City. And the only place we can start with this game is Manchester City's ever-growing injury situation. Manuel Akanji injured in the warm-up in midweek ahead of the Tottenham game, and then Savio taken off with injury during the game with Spurs, and Gvardiol potentially picking up a knock that Pep Guardiola will update us on today. What he's already told us is that Grealish, Doku and Kyle Walker will miss this game against Bournemouth. He confirmed that after the Spurs game. So there's a lot going on with Manchester City, and Bournemouth are on a good run over the last couple of weeks as well. They beat Arsenal at home, albeit after the Saliba red card, and then last week they drew away at Villa and were arguably robbed of a penalty when Leon Bailey stuck his arm up in the air and handballed it in the penalty area and it wasn't given. So potentially Bournemouth could have won that game last week at Villa as well. The big issue working against Bournemouth is that since they got promoted to the Premier League, I think it was in 2016, 2015, Manchester City have won every single game against Bournemouth in all competitions. And it's something like 10 or 12 games, or potentially even more than that. Manchester City, every single game, whether it's home or away, whatever competition it's been in, since Bournemouth got promoted to the Premier League, Manchester City have won every single game. So I am going to go 2-1 to Manchester City. But Bournemouth, the form they're in, the injury crisis at Man City, there is not a better chance to play against City, especially after they just lost for the first time this season against Spurs in midweek. Second 3 o'clock kickoff sees two of the promoted sides going head-to-head. It is winless Ipswich Town taking on Leicester City. Ipswich, I feel like at the moment, are just sort of building and building. The result is coming. They're putting in decent performances. The scorelines are getting better, but the results aren't there. Obviously, defeat to Brentford last time out, despite having a 2-goal lead initially. But then Harry Clark decided to turn up, getting himself an own goal, giving away a penalty, and then getting sent off, accumulating -5 on fantasy football for any of those who play fantasy football. They also potentially might not have Amari Hutchinson available for this one. He's picked up quite a serious illness by the sound of things, but he could be back for this. Leicester at the moment have been very, very poor as well. They were very comfortably beaten at home by Forest last time out, and then their reserves got done over by Manchester United 5-2 in midweek. In the Championship, where these two sides played last year, it was a 1-1 draw on both occasions. So there's not really too much you can take away from that as to who you think might win this. The most likely scenario for me would be a draw. However, as I started this prediction with, I feel like Ipswich are building at the moment, and I think this is going to be the game they get the result. So I'm going to go for 3-1 to Ipswich. I'm pretty confident Ipswich are going to get the win here, but watch this space. Leicester might just turn themselves up after a couple of poor performances over the last 7 days. That then brings us to the first rematch of the week. It is Liverpool taking on Brighton, a repeat of the Carabao Cup tie on Wednesday night. It was a 3-2 victory to Liverpool on that occasion, although that was possibly a little bit flattering on Brighton because Liverpool, for the most part, I think controlled that game pretty well. Brighton getting themselves a couple of late goals to get them back into it. However, this is a match between 2nd and 6th. Brighton are having a very good season in the Premier League. They did throw away that 2-goal lead with, 2 minutes left against Wolves in the last game. So they'll be looking to bounce back in the Premier League. Liverpool, of course, drawing with Arsenal at Anfield, giving up their spot at the top of the Premier League table. And going into this game, it is worth noting that in the last 4 seasons, Brighton have only lost at Anfield once. And that was last season. It was a 2-1 victory to Liverpool. But Brighton's record at Anfield is very, very good. Brighton's record against Liverpool, full stop, is very, very good. But from what I saw the other night, where Liverpool did make changes, when you consider the likes of Van Dijk and Trent and that coming back into the side here, I definitely think Liverpool are still going to come out on top. So I'm going to go for a repeat of last season's scoreline. I'm going to go for 2-1 to Liverpool. But just bear in mind that record Brighton have. Next up, it is in form Nottingham Forest, 7th in the league with only 1 defeat, taking on West Ham, who have moved themselves up to 13th after that very controversial late penalty against Manchester United. They are still going to be missing Mohamed Kudus due to suspension, due to fighting against the entire Spurs team. Potentially big injury news for Nottingham Forest, with Chris Wood coming up as doubtful for this match. However, the expectation is that he is going to be available for this game. Gibbs White potentially still going to be out missing as well. Other than that, there are no fresh injury concerns coming into this one. What I didn't realise before I made this prediction is that last season, Forest won this match 2-0, which is ironic because I'd already gone for 2-0 to Forest before I checked the head-to-head record. I just think the form that both these sides are in, this is easily Forest's game to lose. I expect Forest to get the clean sheet as well because I don't think West Ham have been attacking particularly well and Forest have been defending brilliantly. Then I checked the head-to-head, and when Forest were playing worse and West Ham were playing better last season, Forest won 2-0 then anyway. So I think this is about right. 2-0 to Forest. Let's move on to Southampton taking on Everton. Two sides already in a relegation scrap. Southampton, bottom of the Premier League on just 1 point. However, this is the only Premier League side they have beaten so far this season, albeit through a penalty shootout in the Carabao Cup a few weeks ago, winning at Everton after drawing 1-1 in 90 minutes. For Everton, the big concern going into this is Dwight McNeil. He had to go off injured in their 1-1 draw with Fulham last week. And in Sean Dyche's press conference yesterday, he said it's about 50-50 chance if Dwight McNeil is going to be available for this. So that could be a major, major loss for Everton. For Southampton, you know they're going to play possession. Despite only having 1 point, they're still like third in the Premier League for possession so far this season, which could make it a little bit interesting. However, Everton unbeaten in their last 5. They are the better side going into this game. But again, if it's going to happen for Southampton, if it's not going to happen at home to Everton, I don't know when it's going to happen. I'm not confident enough to give them the win, but I'm going to go for a repeat of the Carabao Cup result, and that was a 1-1 draw. Final game on Saturday sees Wolverhampton Wanderers taking on Crystal Palace. Wolves also without a win in the Premier League. Crystal Palace finally getting themselves sorted after victory against Spurs at the weekend. They then went to Villa Park in the Carabao Cup and defeated Aston Villa, albeit an Aston Villa reserve side, but still a very, very strong starting 11 from Villa. Palace did play their full first team in that cup tie. For me, it's a really tough one to call because Wolves over the last couple of weeks have been so much better. Arguably robbed against Manchester City 2 weekends ago, although I think it was a completely fair goal in the 95th minute. Then getting that 2-2 draw, showing their courage and that fight back against Brighton in their last game in a 2-2 draw. So it's tough. It really is to call this one. This is possibly the toughest one to call of the week because I just think there's going to be goals. Both teams look a little bit dodgy defensively, albeit Palace a little bit better the last couple of weeks. When these sides met last season, both matches were won by the away side, and it was a 3-1 victory. Sorry, both matches were won by Palace, not by the away side. Both matches were won by Palace. It was 3-2 at Selhurst Park, and it was a 3-1 victory to Palace at Molineux last season. So there's definitely a lot of things in favour of Crystal Palace. There are slight doubts over whether or not Eberechi Eze will play, but I think the expectation is he will. But I'm going to give Wolves a result. I'm not going to give them the win. I'm going to go for 2-2. I just, again, kind of like what I was saying about Ipswich, I feel like it's coming for Wolves. And I think Crystal Palace is a good opportunity. It's just after the last week, it might not be the right time to play them. That then takes us on to Sunday. And the opening game on Sunday is a massive match in the race for the top 4. It is Tottenham taking on Aston Villa at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Both suffering poor results over the last few days. Spurs losing to Crystal Palace, but bouncing back with victory over Manchester City in the Carabao Cup. Villa blowing it against Bournemouth at home in the Premier League. And again, that Leon Bailey handball could have meant that Bournemouth won. And they then backed that up with losing at home to Crystal Palace in the Cup, as we've just mentioned. So definitely Spurs are the side with the better mentality coming into this one. Villa a little bit off it over the last couple of weeks, despite, big news for them with Tyrone Mings making his first appearance in over a year in that defeat to Crystal Palace. For Spurs, the two big injury questions are around Mickey van der Ven. There are some suggestions that Van der Ven might even play, and he was taken off precautionally with that hamstring tweak. But surely you don't risk a player who's gone off with a hamstring injury just 4 days later. So I'd expect him not to play. And the other big question, of course, is around Heung-min Son. At the moment, he's listed as doubtful. We'll obviously hear from Ange at some point today or tomorrow whether or not he is going to be available. The last thing to say about this one is that both matches were won by the away side last season. This is where I got confused in the last game. It's both sides won the away fixture last season in this one, with Spurs winning 4-0 at Aston Villa just a few months ago. So there's a little bit extra momentum on Spurs' side in this one as well. I just think the way the fixtures have gone the last couple of weeks, Spurs must be considered the favourites, and I'm going for 2-1 to Spurs. Then we have the main event. Manchester United against Chelsea at Old Trafford in the 4:30 kickoff. Ruud van Nistelrooy's first Premier League game in charge after Erik ten Hag's sacking. Chelsea looking to bounce back from a poor performance against Newcastle in the Cup. However, they did beat Newcastle with their regular Premier League team last weekend. Manchester United, of course, miserable defeat to West Ham after the controversy surrounding the penalty and the sacking of Erik ten Hag. Bounced back with a 5-2 victory over Leicester in the Cup. However, I don't think they played that well. I really don't. The goals were horrendous. The style of play didn't look any different to what it normally is under Ten Hag. The players were obviously trying a lot more because they've got to try and impress the new manager and the new actual manager that looks like it's going to be Amorim. For me, I just think this game comes too soon. I really do. I don't think United are in a position where we can sit here and say they're going to beat Chelsea. They're going to get a result against Chelsea. Chelsea in the Premier League have been brilliant so far this season. So I have to be logical, even as a Manchester United fan, and say realistically, Chelsea still get the win here. So I'm going to go to 2-1 to Chelsea, but I hope and I pray that we do see a really good performance here under Van Nistelrooy, under the lights, at Old Trafford, main event game. We don't have many main event games anymore, so we need to perform in this one. But I just think Chelsea are still going to get the win here, and it protects Amorim from an embarrassing opening result. Finally, it is Fulham taking on Brentford in the Monday Night Football. You can argue that Fulham are somewhat back after a very good performance from them against Everton last week. However, they threw it away in the 94th minute due to a header from Beto at the back post, which really did ruin what was a great performance for them. Brentford were poor in the Carabao Cup off the back of a 4-3 win over Ipswich. They played half their first team, half their reserves, the likes of Mbermo still in that starting lineup, and they were only able to draw with Sheffield Wednesday at home before winning on penalties. So, not the best for Brentford over the last couple of weeks. For Fulham, it looks like Andreas Pereira could be potentially out. He had to go off last week in the Premier League, so it'll be unclear whether or not he's going to be available, but they're not playing till Monday, so there's plenty of time for him to come back. Final thing to note going into this one is that when this match was played last year, Fulham at home to Brentford, it was a 3-0 victory for Brentford at Craven Cottage. A massive result for them. However, that game was in August last year, so it's over a year since that result. And for most of the second half, Fulham had 10 men. So, might be a little bit of a skewed result going into it. For me, from what I've seen over the last few weeks, I can see this one being a very high-scoring one. But I think Fulham have got their momentum back. I think Brentford's momentum has just slowed a little. They've been a little bit dodgy at the back. The goals have been coming for them. But overall, I'm going to go for a 3-2 victory to Fulham to round off today's predictions. Thank you very much for watching, as always. Don't forget to let me know all of your thoughts down in the comment section below. Don't forget to check out the community page where we will have all 10 fixtures for you to vote on how you think each of them are going to go. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. Don't forget to subscribe. 13 more for 5,000 subscribers. I'll be back for my reaction to the Manchester United-Chelsea game on Sunday, so I'll see you there.